So I got the radiator, or the radiator hose, full of water. There's the thermostat. It's been running for maybe 5 minutes or less. I'm just gonna sit here and wait till it warms up and opens the thermostat. And then it'll hopefully burp the air out of there and I can add a little more water. I'm assuming there's probably some air in the system someplace. But we'll let it sit here and run for a minute. It actually doesn't run too bad, but you can see there's a check engine light on, and I think that's a bad camshaft position sensor. But the engine itself sounds okay. When I first looked at it to buy it, I started and it sounded really good, but then it started overheating, so we'll let it run here a couple more minutes. And then I'll drive it home and have my wife or son bring me back and pick up my vehicle. But so far so good. I'm gonna go shut the radiator cap. See if that makes any difference. Oh, we got a little bit of steam coming out of here, so it must have opened up. Let me spray some more water in here. Whoa, easy. So it must be warming up. I just want to make sure it doesn't overheat. That would not be cool. Let me put this camera down for a minute and see what we get. Alright, so there's a little bit of steam coming out of there, so I guess that means the thermostat open. There we go, add a little more water. I'm watching the thermostat inside the vehicle and it's not getting past the halfway point, so I think we're alright. I'm going to go ahead and put the cap on it, that way it can seal it. And maybe that'll help burp it. Engine's purring like a kitten right now. The other day I went to test drive it, I didn't even make it a block and it was running funny and it was overheating. But right now we're not even making it past the halfway point. So I'm pretty sure I can drive it home and then continue my work there. So I'm going to shut this off. If I run into any more problems, I'll make another video on it, but I probably will try and make a video on changing the spark plugs and whatever else. Oh, the camshaft position sensor. I'll hook my scan tool back up to that again and see which one it is. Maybe we can get rid of that traction control light and the engine light. Alright, if I have any more problems, I'll continue this. Welcome to Driveway Garage. Today I'm going to be working on a 2013 Dodge Avenger. Has a little bit of an overheating issue. And from the research I've done, it's probably the thermostat housing. So I'll flip the camera around here and show you the car. Well, it's not a bad looking car. It's not perfect. There's a little crack in the bumper in the front, but overall it's fairly clean. And it looks like it has almost brand new snow tires on it. Some guys just run those all year round. But let's take a look at the problem. I'll maybe do a walk around video on the car later. Well, this one has the 2.4 liter, and it's a real common problem on these for this thermostat housing to go bad, which is down here. It actually has two thermostats in it. There's one right there and then the one over here. The first one, when the engine gets hot, lets the hot water out, and the second one is like, I don't know, an auxiliary. I read about it, I forgot what it said, but let's get this baby off here, because if I put my hand down through here and feel onto the bottom of the water pump housing, it feels like there's a hole in it. I'm just hoping that nobody's driven it while it was getting hot. I came to buy it, just a used car, and then as soon as I started it and let it run for a few minutes, checking everything out, it started overheating. There wasn't any coolant in the radiator or in this hose. The overflow tank was empty. So I started getting suspicious, and then it was just blowing steam out of here once it got hot. So I have a feeling that hole in the bottom of there is where the water's shooting out of. So from the videos I watched, the first thing you got to do is to get the air filter housing off. There's looks maybe like a 10 millimeter bolt here. Then you got to take this hose off, and this sensor, and this bypass hose, whatever it's for. I'm sure somebody knows, but I don't. So let me get my tools out and get the cover off and see what we have under there. So far I like this vehicle just because everything up here is flat. You can lay your toolbox out, and some vehicles, everything's so misaligned, there's no room to put your tools. You have to get a table or something. So let's check this baby out, see if it's a 10 millimeter or not, but it kind of looks like one. Yep, it's 10 millimeter, so let me get that off there. I'm not sure if this is the way it's supposed to be, but it has a 10 millimeter bolt with the nut on the bottom of it. So when you take it off, be careful it doesn't fall down inside the housing there. And that is almost loose. And you also, now that I think about it, you have to take this intake tube off, which isn't too hard since it's not connected to anything. It's supposed to be, but it's not. All right, let me continue on here. I'll get the top of this housing out. So I got the top of the breather box off. You would think there would be some kind of latch on here, but all it has is a couple pieces of plastic that I took a screwdriver and I pried this little tab, or this part out, and it slipped off of there. But you would think there would be some kind of a hinged latch on there, but there's not. Now you got to go down below here and on this intake pipe. You got to take this other socket loose, or bolt, so you can get this out of the way. And you got to take your needle nose pliers or whatever you have, take these hose fittings off. Now there's one there, there's one here, and then there's two in the back over there that go to the heater core inside the vehicle. And then when I get this out of the way, then I can pull the air breather out of there. Well, I got that clamp loose, and I got this clamp off. Let's see if this will come out of there now, or maybe I gotta wiggle that. Get that clamp loose, a little looser. Can't get my drill down in there, so I'm doing it with a 1/4-inch socket and a 6-inch extension. I think I'm gonna have to loosen it just a little more. All right, I got it loose. I will pull it off, set it to the side. That gives us a little more working room. And then we should be able to take the air filter off. And there's supposed to be a couple of grommets. It looks like maybe there's one there, and it seems like there's a couple more down in there to hold this air box on. Let's see if we can get this out of there. I'm looking at it, I don't really see a bolt on it. Maybe it's just held on there by friction, huh? Let me see what I can do. Okay, I got the air box off. There's just a couple rubber grommets that slide onto those two studs sticking up. You just have to wiggle it back and forth till it comes off of there. It's not too bad, but I wasn't sure how it was attached. I didn't want to break it, but yeah, it's different than the video I watched, but it comes out of there all right. So next we need to do is get these hoses off of here. Now this one already boiled all the cooling out, so if there's anything in there, it's just water. So I'm going to take this hose off and those two hoses off. And then there's only 3 bolts that hold that on. Oh yeah, and you got to take this sensor off here also. Oh, I broke out my big needle nose pliers to get that main hose off the clamp, which is now sitting there. They're kind of a booger. I think these two in the back here are not going to be fun, but I'm going to get my pliers out, see if I can't get them off. Well, looking at this, I forgot there's also this bottom hose that's clamped on there. So I guess there's a total of 4 water hoses. 2 go into the heater core and 2 go into the radiator. So we're going to get that one off. And those back there, they just don't give you much room to get your hand in there. And I didn't bring my water pump pliers, so I'm trying to get by with needle nose pliers. We'll see if I can do this or not. So these clamps really don't want to come back over the rubber hose because of this bump on the end of the nipple. So what I did is I just pushed it forward past the hose. Now this one I did the same thing. I pushed the clamp forward, then I pulled the hose off behind it. And that seems to work the best because it doesn't want to squeeze enough to get you past the bump on the plastic housing. Now back to the back one. So the struggle continues. I took out these 2 bolts. There's a thermostat here, and on both sides of that there's a bolt. And I was able to use my cordless drill with the 3-inch extension. It's 10 millimeters. I got those 2 out. Now there's one more. I forgot to bring my flashlight, but there's one more on the back side of the thermostat housing right down in here. So I don't think it'll be too hard to get to. But those hoses in the back, they're a real pain. Now the bottom hose curls around and goes up to here. So I took the top clamp off. I'm going to try to separate it right there and hope I don't break anything, because I just can't get my pliers down there to get that clamp off. Now I was able to scoot the top clamp back, so now I've got to wiggle that hose off. I'm hoping by taking the thermostat housing loose, I can pull it out and give me a little more slack. Then I took the sensor off the top here. I just pushed in on this tab with my pliers and it popped right off. Then when you take this out, you have to put this onto the new housing. It's a sensor. There's a little tab on front or back right here, I guess it is. You lift up on that tab and then rotate this counterclockwise, like 90 degrees maybe, and it'll pop out of there, and then you put that in the new housing. And also it comes with 2 new thermostats. There's actually one here which sometimes you can replace. I guess you can replace it. And there's another one behind here. Never seen a vehicle with 2 thermostats in the same housing, but oh well, must have a purpose. I'm just not sure what it is. So let me see if I can get this thing loose. I'm actually working on this car about 2 miles from my house. So I ran home. I had to powder my nose anyway. And I grabbed my water pump pliers. And that's what I was using to get those clamps off. Because needle nose pliers just like to slip off and they just don't work very good. Alright, I'm going to pause this, use my camera flashlight, or my phone flashlight, to see where the other bolt is. You can't be too careful when you buy a vehicle from people, because people do not mind lying to you. So I finally got the housing off. It was a booger. But you can see how melted it is here. It's not supposed to be that way. And down in this passageways here, there's a bunch of, well, there's some of the plastic I took out. And when I was looking at the car, I took out some chunks of plastic. I think there's more laying back there on the block, or the transmission. And then you can see where it's shiny here and not here. This is melted plastic, which I'm trying to get out of there. But I'm sure they realized they drove it when it was running hot. Maybe it was the son. It was supposed to be his car, but somebody's lying, because somebody knew this is all melted There's junk in the thermostat, and I can see it's cocked to the side. Probably got something stuck in it. Well, that should come out of there easy enough, I guess. Maybe it's supposed to just set down in there, but it looks like it's kind of warped. You can see the thermostat inside there is leaning to one side, so maybe it failed, and that's what caused it to overheat. But before I took it off, I put my hand down in there, and I could feel that hole there, so I knew the housing was bad. But this just got super hot and melted the plastic, so I'm just hoping that the new housing and O-rings and everything will seal it up good enough it won't overheat again. I hope they didn't do any damage to the engine. When I first started it, it started right up and it sounded good, but then after about 5 minutes it started overheating, and it was just seemed like it was just blowing steam out over here by the transmission. That's because this sits in there like that, and that's where that hole is. So I got a pretty good deal on the car. I just hope there's no permanent damage, and hopefully what I'm doing will fix it. And I'm telling you, these two hoses on the back are a pain in the butt, because there's just not much room to get your pliers in there. Once I got the housing off, I got more room, and I was able to get in there and get the other clamp off, but they do not make it easy. And when you do this, there's an O-ring right there you have to take off. So use a pick or whatever, get that off there, put on a new O-ring. And then I think there's another one someplace. Maybe it's on this sensor, I can't remember. And make sure you get your thermostat in right. Now it just sets in there, and there's a little tab right there. And make sure you get it into the housing correctly so that it actually works. But this vehicle has been really hot and melted that plastic, so if there was some way to do it, I would run water through the motor and flush it out, because I don't want any pieces of plastic coming back and getting into the new housing and the new thermostats, jamming them up. Well, I'm waiting for the part to arrive today, and then I'm going to put this back together, so I'll continue this video later. So I took the garden hose, I put the radiator cap on, and I started running water into the top hose, and then I went ahead and rerouted the bottom hose, and it's still draining, but I got it down as low as I could, and I ran a bunch of water through the radiator, try to flush out any junk in there. And I see there's a bunch of junk in the overflow tank. It's really foamy, so I'm going to put the water in there and just let it run and try to clear all that crap out of there, because I'm sure they probably put something in here to try to fix this, and of course it didn't work. If I was home, I'd use my air compressor and shoot some air through there, but I'm just going to have to do it with water. I also disconnected the overflow tube here from the radiator cap housing and put it down, and then I just kept running water into here to get all that junk cleaned out of there. Now it's nice and clean. I'll probably do the radiator one more time, and then I won't have to worry about all this junk, hopefully, plugging up the radiator or messing up the thermostats. So I'll put I might just run water right into the cap here. This way it vents and it goes a little faster. While I have the camera on, I'll just show you what I'm doing. I'm at somebody else's house, a friend of mine, so I don't know where all their stuff is, and I don't have my stuff, so I'm just going to use this Y divider and turn it on and get some water going in here. So this way it can breathe. Oh, there it comes, bubbling up. And now she's draining out the bottom, so you might be able to see it down there. That'll get a lot of the junk out of there. I'll feel a lot better about putting this new housing on without all that junk in the radiator and the cooling system. I also put this tube back onto the throttle body. I didn't want to fill the throttle body full of water by throttle body through full of water by accident. So I put the intake tube back on to protect that. I guess I still need to take that hose down in there and try to wash all that junk off the top of the transmission, because there's really a lot of junk down there. Well, I came home, I was going to take a break, wait for my parts, and on my front porch was an Amazon package. Has the new thermostat in it. I mean the new thermostat housing. One without improper holes in it. And in case you didn't understand before, there is another thermostat inside of here. Why it has two of them, I don't know. And the other one goes into here. Now you have to put this rubber gasket on it, and it's got a little tab. Let me flip a light on here so we can see a little better. So this rubber ring goes around that, and then it sets in here, and there's a little tab right there that you have to line up, make sure it's in the right spot. And from watching videos, I knew this before, but I always forget stuff. When you put this thermostat in, you want this little weep hole toward the top. Oh, sorry, you're not looking at what I'm looking at. This little thing right here is a kind of a bleeder hose that helps let air out. So you want to have it in a position. It'll go in there like that. But so it sits at the top, and that way it lets air bypass and less chance of getting air stuck in there, because until your thermostat opens, you're going to have air trapped in there. And if you got air trapped in there right around the thermostat, it may not get hot enough to open, and your car just might overheat. And it also has a new O-ring that goes around the pipe. I think it goes right there. And then this is one, I think that goes to the sensor that clips into here, if I remember right. So I'm going to head back down to the car now that I have my parts, and see if I can't get it back together. Put some water in it for now. I won't waste my time putting antifreeze in it, and hopefully I can drive it home. I forgot it also needs a camshaft position sensor, which I ordered at the same time. And there that is. And they put this in this box, on top of this box. Not in it, but on top of it. And then in that plastic bag, so it all got smushed down. The sensor was not in the box anymore, but it doesn't look like it got damaged. So there's two of those, and I'm not sure which one's bad, so I've got to get my scope out, or my scanner, and see which one of them's bad. Because the car, before it overheated, was running a little rough. So I'll continue this when I get down there. So as I said before, you need to reuse this sensor that sits on top of the thermostat housing. And you see that little tab sticking out there. You lift up on that. Normally it's sitting right there. You lift up on that tab, and then this will rotate. Not quite 90 degrees, I don't think. And then just wiggle that sensor out of there. This one has get it down here, has some junk on it, so I'm going to clean that off. And then I'm going to put a little bit of this white lithium grease on it and stick it back into the housing. And I almost forgot, that little O-ring is the one that goes around here. So I'm going to take my little pick, take this O-ring off, and then put that new one back on there. At least I think that's where it goes. So I sprayed a little bit of lithium grease on it, and it just slipped right on there. The other one was kind of flattened out, but this one's nice and round, so I stick that back in the housing. So now that I'm looking at it, I have a better idea how it works. You see those little wings sticking out there? The housing, or the thermostat, or sensor, sorry. It has wings on it. They're different sizes, so you can't put it in wrong, I guess. So that will just slide down into the appropriate notches, which is right there. I think I might have to spray some more lubricant on there. Hang on. Yeah, a little more lubricant. It slipped right in there. Now you just twist it and it locks into place. So now that's ready to go. Now I need to take that big O-ring, put some lubricant on in and put it on that circle right there. So let me get that done. So I just sprayed some of that grease in my hand and then rubbed it on the O-ring, and I sprayed some on the piece of metal down there to make sure it slid on nice and easy. And then I think when I get ready to put this on there, I'll spray some lubricant around here too and make sure it slides onto that O-ring nice and easy. I don't think it'll be a problem, but just want to make sure it all slides back together the way it's supposed to. And looking at this, I guess this is the piece that slides over that O-ring. So I'll definitely put some grease on there. It seems like there should be some kind of an O-ring right there. Oh, that's where that thermostat goes. Okay. So once I get the thermostat in that notch, which I can do right now. Oh, I can't. I haven't got the gasket on. Let me do that. So on the inside of this gasket, there's a little bit of a notch, so it slips right onto the thermostat easily. And then the thermostat, like I said before, you got to see how it goes into the house or attaches, and you want to have this little bunghole right here toward the top. So let me see how that goes and get that put in. So the housing is going to sit on the motor like this. So I got that little hole toward the top, and I think I'm ready to slip this back on there. I am going to check. No, I've already cleaned everything off, so I should be able to slip this on, and you can see there's a bolt by my thumb and 2 bolts over there, and that's what holds this on. Well, as hard as it was to get those hoses off, it's just as hard to get them back on again. I'm almost thinking I should have put them on before I bolted the housing back in place, but I didn't want to take a chance with that O-ring back there not being lined up, so it's just a struggle. There's just not a lot of room back there to get those hoses on. And then I'm going to have to reach back in there and get those clamps back on again. What a pain. All this, I think this is the engine computer. All these wiring harnesses and stuff are right in the way. There's this one here and these up here, and the one in the back. It's just a real pain, but I'll get it on there. It's just a struggle. Well, I got the top one on. I got the clamp back on it. The bottom one's almost on, but the clamp's kind of holding it up, so the clamp almost needs to go back further or squeeze it while the hose goes on, but I'm telling you, there's no room. I already cut my hand once. It's just a battle, so be prepared.